Hi, Jimmy. Welcome to From Pain Point to On Point. How are you today?
Hello, hello, and yeah, thank you so much. I'm super great. Looking forward to be here and talk with you.
Yeah, me too. I'm really excited. I think this is going to be a really great conversation talking all about outbound sales and AI and motivation and visibility and all the things that are just so important to a sales motion. But before we dive into our conversation, I want to get a little background on Adversus, the
Hmm?
company that you work for, head of sales
Yes.
for, a little background on you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and Adversus?
Yeah, sure, sure. So where should I start with myself or Adversus you pick?
Ooh, I pick. Okay. Well, you know what? I'm more interested in you, Jimmy. Why don't you tell me what you do, and then we can jump into
Cool,
Adversus.
cool. Yeah, but my name is Jimmy and currently head of sales. Have been in Adversus for 7 years. Our company in general is almost 11 years old, so been around for almost the beginning. But yeah, I'm head of sales, which means that I have the day-to-day responsibility together with my direct manager, Brian, our CSO, the sales employees we have. We have like a team of 20 BDRs. So they are hammering the phone the entire time. And then we have five account executive that are taking all the meetings from the BDRs. Yeah, and where should I begin? I came into Adversus, as I said, like 7 years ago. I started my sales background originally after, yeah, I think after like when I was done like with school, basically. I worked at a local store in a city in Denmark where I was like a car store selling Mercedes. But then
Yeah.
I went to business academy. Then some of the boring school stuff kind of made more sense to me. It was a bit more practical, and all of a sudden I started to perform quite good, got some good grades and so on. After the business academy, I was a little bit like, okay, what's then? And then ended into a retail store selling like electronics, TV, computers, mobile
Mm.
phones, and so on. And it did amazing actually. I outperformed a lot of people. Um, and then they offered me a position to be a trainee for 2 years, and I was a little bit like, yeah, why not? Why not? And then I started to compete in bodybuilding and train for many, many years and all of those things, and really spent my entire effort into that. Then I entered into a big telco company in customer service and billing service. I found a very nice place to be honest, because we was also selling there. You had to upsell them something and grow there as a professional and became team lead and got my own team there.
Mm.
So did that for a couple of years, and then I switched to something completely different. And I didn't like that because it was not a sales job, and I was sitting and juggling Excel spreadsheet the entire day, and that was not really in for me. And then our dear director of Adversus texted me on LinkedIn because he has been working at the same place, asked if there was a guy that could come down to Adversus and support. And then someone pointed the finger at me, and I was a little bit like, okay, I don't know what you're doing,
Good.
guys, and I don't know what a SaaS company is. I remember to the interview for Adversus, I was like Googling on my phone in the bus, like what is a CRM system even? I never really thought about it like a market, to be honest.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
was a little bit like, what the fuck? I've only been selling like hardware and subscriptions and mortgage and so on. So I actually honestly didn't knew what they were
Yeah.
doing. So I prepared a little bit like a typical sales guy would do. And okay, into the room, I asked, do you have a position in sales? Because I don't really want to do customer service, but they didn't have that. I was a little bit like, okay, it seems like a cool place, nice environment, smaller company, good people. And I said, okay, let's give it a go. I
Yeah.
entered Adversus as a customer success manager. After two years in, I switched over to sales, and then the rest is history.
I think the common theme that is sticking out to me is that you you really like a challenge. You like to be in competition with yourself.
Yeah,
It feels like everything that you've done in like even starting from school age to now has been the areas in which you thrive is when you're competing kind of with yourself and
yeah.
trying to be better, trying to take on more, which I think is just it's such an important mindset for a
Mhm.
salesperson. Like in order to be a
Exactly.
successful salesperson, I think that you have to really like being challenged and being
Mhm.
put in positions where the odds are kind of against you and
Exactly.
you have that motivation to overcome it.
100%.
And so I feel like this is an origin story that so many salespeople will listen
Exactly.
to, and they're going to be like, yeah, totally. This is exactly kind of how it happened for me as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And when I really reflect now, I think one of the biggest reasons why I entered sales is actually because, like, since I was very, very young, I always had that desire to be good at something. So I think when I went
Yeah.
into the business academy, I got like the grasp success. And then I went to bodybuilding, good success there. And then I got my sales job after a sales job. And then throughout that period, I have been like striving for the next great thing all the time.
I love that backstory. Tell me a little bit about Adversus and what Adversus does.
Yeah, so basically at Versus, we are, as I said earlier, a SaaS company. And even though to my interview, I thought it was a CRM system because I saw the word CRM on the webpage and I didn't knew what a CRM was. We're not a CRM per se. Like we
Okay.
have some similarities, but we are designated outbound tool that you can use for a sales department to kick in some doors. So if you have an outbound department, you want to reach out to more people, you have a team that you need to make scalable, a system like ours is the right choice there. So sales weapon.
Nice. Nice. So let's talk a little bit about Adversus. Adversus has been around for about 11 years. You've been
Yes.
with Adversus for 7. So
Yes.
you've been there for a significant portion of its growth. So how do you keep the energy of that startup? How do you, as you guys grow and get bigger, I mean, you said you have 20 BDRs, which is a
Yeah,
ton.
for sure.
How do you kind of maintain that energy and that excitement as you guys grow
Sure.
so much?
It's a difficult one, of course, because I think in startups is typically in the beginning, you have a smaller team, of course, and usually, let's say there's 10 people or something like that, then maybe out of those 10, there will be at least 8 rock stars. And I think like we was pretty fortunate that when I started, basically every single employee of Adversus back then, all of us that was in that team was like so close together and we was committed and we was working overtime and we really wanted to do stuff. And I think, of course, that naturally, with the right product, the right mindset, and the discipline and the consistency, we grow a lot. So I think in our growth in Adversus in the sales division, like we've grown a lot through outbound, to be honest, which makes sense since we're selling outbound platforms. So we
Mhm.
always say is that we're taking our own medicine. So we grow through
Yeah.
outbound. I think what people are often doing when they want to scale outbound is think too short term, so you're not thinking long term enough. If we want to scale even more, then we need to duplicate the process. And how could we do that? Because back before first BDR got hired, we basically just took our cell phone and dialed phone, so we didn't even use our own system, right? And again, that's the good and the bad with high performers. High performers will always find a way, and it doesn't really matter if you give them like a cell phone or you give them a car so you can go out and knock doors, right? They'll always find a way to achieve it. But we was also aware that we also need to make something that's scalable and we need to be able to ramp up new employees quite quickly as well, plus being better to forecast and plan for the future. So yeah, we started using our own amazing calling platform. And then we thought, okay, this is actually pretty interesting because before I was spending maybe like 60% of my time like doing cold calls and having demos. And by hiring a new BDR, then we actually have a guy that can fill up my calendar 100% almost. So we said, okay, what the heck? Let's hire 2 more.
Good problem to have, huh?
Yeah, amazing, amazing. But
Yeah.
we also started to encounter some issues, right? Because we growed with the team with like even though there's only like 2 to 3 reps, it was basically a growth of the team on like a couple of 100% all of a sudden. So you could also
Mhm.
start to see the flaws in the system.
Mhm.
But the biggest issues we encountered was like when we got up around 10 and above, actually, because all of a sudden
Yeah.
then you kind of realize that even like 1% matters quite a lot. And that is something that we noticed quite heavily, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that makes sense because one of the things that I wanted to talk about a little bit was balancing the need for implementing structure
Yeah.
and process in a new team that's growing, but having a good balance of adaptation and flexibility as you
Um,
grow because things are going to change. There's going to be stuff that works, like processes and workflows that work at a smaller stage that don't necessarily work at a bigger stage, and kind of how do you maintain that flexibility? But to your point, once you get to 10 employees or 10 BDRs, it's so important to have that structure in place and to have the workflow a little bit more nailed down.
Exactly.
because you've just got more people to wrangle. There's just more people to deal with, and especially if you're working in a startup and you've got that hustle mindset and everybody's hitting the phones, we're really bought into moving forward and getting these meetings booked. It's kind of like wrangling stallions.
Yeah.
You got to like give some parameters for them so they
Yeah.
don't burst through the gates,
Yeah, exactly,
which is
exactly. And it's also
yeah,
about showing them the way, of course, because like again, like
totally.
I think we was really fortunate, like like our concept when we have hired BDRs has always been like finding the right person. And I know that sounds super generic, but when we are looking for the right person, it's not necessarily the person that has the most experience, because we have had a lot of guys also that had like previous sales experience, but it didn't always correlate over to how we're doing it in Adversus. We have actually seen the
Yeah.
tendency is that there's not necessarily the one with the biggest experience or the longest resume in terms of sales that succeeded the most in Adversus. We have actually had amazing success by taking people we had a good gut feeling with, had the right talent profile, and then make them succeed in Adversus.
Yeah, what are some attributes that you guys look for when you're
Yeah,
hiring that you feel like makes them a good fit for Adversus?
yeah, like of course you cannot really put everyone into one box, of course, but
Sure.
something that's very early on that we looked at is kind of like elite sports mentality. That's been in
Mm,
the elite sport environment that is also like super classic for sales. But the reason why we're doing it is because like they're used to being on pressure constantly. They are used
right.
to being measured the entire time. So they are always used to being measured in everything that they're doing and have very tangible goals the entire time. So this like sales roller coaster that you are getting into is not as uncommon for them. Usually they actually is quite happy under those circumstances, because sales is a big roller coaster. It's so easy to see when you're doing great, but of course,
Yes.
the flip side of the coin is also it's pretty easy to see when you're lacking.
Yeah.
But usually people that have like some kind of elite sports mentality, like Brian, my manager, has been a professional soccer player, football player, as we would call it in Europe. I've been doing a lot
The
of,
World Cup is in the United States right now, so
yeah,
now
that's
we're
true.
calling it football,
That's
okay?
that's true.
We're
That's true. And
we're
you won the
getting on
last
board with it.
yeah, yeah, and you won the last game as well. You was playing 2-0, so that was
Oh
amazing. And
gosh,
some
I
incredible
know.
stadiums that you have, so it's amazing.
It's really
Um,
nice. It's really fun. Fun to have everybody here.
yeah, exactly. And then, but yeah, like I've been in bodybuilding. The first BDR Jeppe we had, he has been, yeah, actually he was also a professional football player. So we have always looked for people that has like this elite sports mentality or come from some elite environment.
I think it's such a good call out that people that have grown up in sports or have done professional sports, they're very used to being measured.
Yes,
I think obviously there's a lot of pressure, there's a lot of discipline that goes into being in sports and doing sports
yes,
professionally. But I think what is the biggest call out and stand out to me is the being measured
exactly.
part. Having that be accustomed, that's just kind of like your part of your daily life that like you have KPIs of your own, you have
Mm,
your own personal goals and you're tracking them and you're
yes.
following them and trying to achieve them. And I think that that's yeah, I think that's a really great call out.
Mm,
Because it's so
yeah.
true. I think that the measurement part can really trip people up sometimes.
Exactly. And that's also something we learn like when we grow up the team, like you always also got to set the expectations for them, because
Totally.
like the reason why BDRs are existing, right? The reason why we actually in Adversus, we calling the BDRs the playmakers, because they need to pass an amazing ball to the account executive, which essentially are the attackers. But essentially an account executive should basically be getting tap-ins only, not to discredit the account executive, but like the
Yeah,
BDRs are honestly like the playmakers. So they are making all these
I
amazing
love that.
Hail Marys and so on, and these amazing passes and so on. And then you have the attackers that have to tap in. But
I love
very
that.
early on, we really need to set up the expectations for the BDRs, because if you, for instance, are wondering about taking a BDR position and you don't really know what to expect, and you expect that 9 out of 10 leads will be fully qualified when you are getting to present it on the dialer screen, then of course you will be heavily disappointed. Like the reason why it's like business development representative is basically like you have to do a lot of digging. There will be a lot of irrelevant companies, uh, companies that cannot use your platform, and you really need to look throughout the cracks and find the proper company and then play the account executives.
Yeah. I love that you call the BDRs playmakers because I think
Yes.
that a BDR role and an SDR role, people can feel like it's grunt work, if you
Yeah,
will.
exactly.
But to your point, it's like this is one of the most important jobs, right? Like
Yeah.
because if you're doing your job well, if you're calling the right play and tapping in your AE at the right moment,
Mm.
then you're basically passing off something that can, ideally get to goal, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And
Exactly.
and it all starts with the BDR. It all starts with the right play.
For
And
sure.
I think as a sales culture in general, we don't put enough emphasis and we don't necessarily give our BDRs the flowers that they deserve.
No, for
Um,
sure, for
and they
sure.
really
Like
do.
it's the most important job almost within the sales department. Of course, you cannot live without the account executive, but you can
For
certainly
sure.
not live without the BDRs either. And they are basically like yin and yang. They're super, super connected, of course. But that
Yeah.
is the next thing we, of course, also added into like our career path was also to start to establish some kind of like career plan. Because as you said, it's like, of course, like a lot of people see it as an entry level position, but that
Hmm.
also depends on how the company is operating the BDR team. Because I also think now I'm basically only speaking with sales divisions, and there is also companies that maybe don't think too highly about like the SDRs, like the easy replaceable in and out, and they don't really,
Yeah.
as you said, emphasize the importance of the BDRs either. Like the good part is that Adversus, of course, and maybe we're a bit fortunate, right? We are a sales tool, so of course we understand sales, but we have always really prioritized the sales department a lot. We have grown through sales. Sales have been filling up all the gaps and so on. Of course, customer success, support, everyone in Adversus is playing a part, and we cannot live without any of them. But I think the sales part is something that's like super, super important. And what we did pretty early on when we was around 3 BDRs, we started to establish like the career path. And in the beginning, we took like the next natural step, such as you can go to an account executive after X time, right? So we had like a 12 to 13 month plan where you could go from BDR to account executive. We still have that, but of course, there's some other varieties to it because we also learned something in the process. Like, you're not necessarily a good account executive just because you was a good SDR, BDR.
Sure. Yeah, totally. I think that's
Because,
something that happens all the time in sales. I think that
yes,
people people join a sales organization. I mean, it happens not just in sales, it happens everywhere, but
uh,
you join a department or you join an organization, you do that job that you got hired for really well, you get
yes,
promoted, and I
exactly.
would argue that there's not a lot of training to be a manager or to like,
No, no,
take on the new position,
of
and
course not.
and then they're not doing that, and then you don't do
No.
that well. And but I feel like it's a little bit of a fallacy. I feel like I love hearing that you guys kind of have like a career pipeline and
Yeah,
that you
yeah, for sure.
think about moving people from BDR to AE, and that's like
Yes.
something that's baked into your culture because I think for so many people, uh, that is not baked into their company culture, and so they just get promoted, and there's this expectation like you were good at this thing, you'll be good at this
Mm,
thing, but there isn't any support, and there isn't any
no,
education, and there's nothing continued for them to learn from. So then they ultimately end up not succeeding, and that feels like a
exactly.
personal failure when in fact it's a systemic failure.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And it's also like you also got to remember salespeople are getting motivated by results. Like there's no salesperson that not getting motivated by results. Because if you don't have like this career path and then the next big step when you are a BDR as an account executive, then all of a sudden they'll get tunnel vision and then they'll think about that is where they are supposed to be
Hmm.
without necessarily thinking and reflect inwards themselves if this is even the right path for them. Because as I said, there's multiple cases also in our team where we took like a person from the BDR that actually was really loving being a BDR, but of course like the next step was being an account executive. And then this person got promoted and this person was not particularly happy about the new role
Hmm.
as an account executive because all of a sudden it was another ball game. The pressure remained the same because I think where BDRs, SDRs often goes wrong is the reason their motivation for becoming an account executive is because they maybe want to get away from the phones. And let's be
Yeah.
honest, like even as an account executive, you will be a lot on the phone. Account executive they have to hunt for themselves as well, because there will maybe be a rainy day or dry spells where their calendar is not booked, and they also have to go out in the forest and hunt some losers as well. So they're also going to do those.
Yeah,
So if you are SDR and you are looking to get promoted to an AE, so you don't have to hammer the phones anymore, then you'll be very disappointed when you finally get your first days as an account executive, because you'll be using the phones as much.
totally. I saw something on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago that I thought was really great, and I wish that I could remember the person who had posted it, so I could give them the credit. But um, they're basically talking about being a sales VP.
Mm.
And he's like, I still cold call all the time.
Yeah,
Because how else am I going to keep this hustle? How else am I going to know
yeah,
what my BDRs and SDRs are going
yeah.
through, what my AEs are going through? Part of being in sales, just in general, is
Mhm.
the outbound work, the grunt work that we don't want to do is the most integral part
Yeah,
of sales,
exactly,
you know?
exactly,
Um,
exactly.
and so you've got to always be doing it, and you're always going to be doing it. And
Yeah, for
I
sure.
think that's really important.
At least you should do in
Yeah,
some to some extent. But I think it's a little bit the same as the BDR that gets motivated by becoming an account executive to get away from the phone. You also see so many sales leaders as well, like they're, of
yeah,
course, again, it starts like, okay, the next big step, the next big thing is being a team leader. That's the next step from an account
sure.
executive, maybe, or head of sales or VP of sales, etc. Right? So it's also like, because like the way we are programmed as salesmen is always to reach the next milestone, basically. And often, if there's no career path within the company or a lack of career path within the company, like of course it'll be these natural steps that you're looking forward to. And then there's also some of these people, okay, they see, okay, the promotion is the next big thing. Plus, then I maybe don't need to do all the hustle myself anymore.
Yeah, totally. Um, One of the things that we had kind of touched upon before was talking about how SDRs and BDRs are kind of easily replaceable. And I think
Hmm.
that this is becoming really prevalent in conversation now with the
Yes.
introduction of AI, because there's so
Yeah.
many platforms coming out now that are that are SDR replacements, that are AI SDR
Yeah.
replacements, right? So I
Yeah,
want to know what you
sure.
think about that, and
Yeah.
if you think that that type of AI is going to be helpful or hurtful to the sales process. I'm just curious to know what you think about that.
I mean, first of all, I think the hardest person to replace is a BDR.
Mm,
I think there's a big misconception within our industry that people think they're easily replaceable, because they shouldn't be that. They are the playmakers. And I don't think AI, at least not in our time, will replace salespersons. I mean, last week was a bit funny. Like, there was like my manager got like a call next to me, and he picked up the phone and put it on speaker, and it was like an AI speaking. And actually, like, y- you could easily hear it was an AI because it talked a
yeah,
bit robotic, but at least it took into account what you were saying. So you could actually ask a question and it handled the objections purely. But to be honest, I don't really think in our time they will replace outbound salespeople. I think it's also important to remember, why are we buying from companies or people? It's about trust as well. Like, it doesn't really matter how good the product is if you don't really trust the company. And I really think it's so hard to
1,000%.
trust AI, to be honest.
Yeah, I really agree. We've been really lucky to have a lot of great guests on the podcast this quarter. And so many of our conversations have kind of revolved around what AI is going to do and how it's going to affect sales as, sales as a discipline, workflow, all of that.
Hmm.
And I think all of the sales leaders that I've spoken to have kind of come to the consensus on is that sales is absolutely a a job that is built around trust.
Exactly.
And it's all about human connection. And yeah, to your point, like you can't trust a robot, right? Like it's programmed, and it can adapt, it can answer questions,
Yeah.
but it can't respond to
No,
questions, right?
exactly.
Like it's answering the things that you're asking, but it's not responding to you. And there's real
Exactly.
nuance in that. So
Mm.
yeah, I totally agree. Um,
But I still think, though, that AI can help us become much better as a salesman as well.
Totally.
Both as an employee, but also as a manager, because as a manager of sales, there is so many things that's like totally blind spots. The human gut feeling is an amazing thing, right? Because usually it's right. Usually you should trust your intuition, but still, if you only trust on your intuition and your gut feeling, we gotta be honest, we cannot be around 10 or 20 reps the entire time. It's super hard to scale that department if it's only on intuition. But again, the very stereotypical salespersons is not very structured. That is, for some reason, almost industry standard. I know now I'm putting everything into one size of a box, but still, normally people are saying, yeah, salesperson, if you're a good salesperson, then the chances for you being structured is not that high. But again, we
Yeah.
also do remember like what tools like a dialer service is providing, what sales screens are providing, what AI are providing is essentially about making sure that the sales rep just have to be good at what he or her is good at, basically. Because I know, like, my manager have always told me, like, do you think a guy like Cristiano Ronaldo that's playing in the World Cup right now, he could be the best defender in the world? And I always said, yeah, I think so. And he said, yeah, I think so too. But he prioritized his focus on being the best attacker in the world. And then he became the best attacker in the world. And it's a little bit the same, like if you have like sales prep and they're not super structured, if you try to spend all your energy to make them structured, then all of a sudden they maybe have to spend like 90% of their entire energy consumption on being structured. And you know what? Then they will lose on the sales results. So it's about finding these
Yeah.
tools like AIs that can help them with emails, following up automatically, see patterns and trends, objection handling, and so on. So they just have to focus on what they actually are good at. Let them be the best salesperson in the world and not the most structured salesperson.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. I think that something that we see all the time when we get people joining Sales Screen when they buy Sales Screen is that um visibility is such a big thing for sales managers, like not being able to see everything that their salespeople or
Yes.
their BDRs or their SDRs are doing, right? Even though they have CRMs, even though they have other
Yeah.
platforms. And so what inevitably ends up happening is that when they join Sales Screen, their teams are in a platform where they're getting rewarded or recognized or acknowledged or
Um,
whatever based on just activity, just
yeah.
the everyday things that they do all of the time that are not necessarily sales closed. Sometimes it is
Exactly.
just I made 25 calls today, or I booked
Yeah.
3 meetings
Exactly.
this week, or whatever. Um, and so what they end up seeing is that they get higher adoption in their CRMs and in their
Mhm.
existing platforms
Yeah.
because
Exactly.
people want to get
Yeah.
that recognition in sales screen. They're like, oh, okay, so
100%.
now I know I have to do it
Yeah.
here so that I can get it over here and I can get my
Yeah.
coins and I can get my endorsements and, all of that good stuff. And I think it makes so much sense that salespeople, people that are really good at sales are people that are they're people like they're people
Yeah.
persons,
Exactly.
they want to talk to people, they want to be on the phone, they want to be chatting with people and having those
Yeah. Exactly.
connections.
And want to win
And
and want to get some rewards and some acknowledgement as well.
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But, like, it doesn't necessarily translate to, okay, well, now I have to go in and I have to enter in all of my numbers and I have to put in all of my notes and I have to
No,
make sure
no,
that I'm
no.
doing all of this stuff, right? And so having a platform, whether that's, Adversus that is helping with outbound, kind of taking that
Uh,
lift off of them, or Sales Screen that's rewarding their progress, or AI
um,
that's like surfacing insights and kind of giving next steps. All of those things are so beneficial to enabling your salespeople to
yes.
be even better
Yeah. For sure.
salespeople. And
And
that
it's
is the way that
basically
we should be moving,
sure,
I
and that's
think.
basically back to, yeah, I totally agree. And it's basically back to like 1% matters in these type of jobs here.
Yeah.
Like the first thing, in my opinion, if you have like a outbound department and you want to scale it to above the 10 or maybe even above 5, is like to ensure that they have the right calling tool. Because if they
Mm,
are like sitting with their cell phone or I mean, then they're basically using a bicycle when they are supposed to use a Formula One car. So that is like the
yeah.
first thing. Like if you have a CRM and you want to achieve higher numbers, more meetings, more sales, more revenue, give them a Formula One car so they can actually drive and finish the finish line way quicker than if it was on a bicycle. So find a proper dialer. Once you have been running that and you have that up to speed, then you also need to take a look at your leads as well. Like, of course, you need to put some good data in. That is more for the RevOps team that can do those things. You need to have that in place. But what we also have seen, especially now that we are around 20, is actually also start implementing gamification, because gamification is a magical thing, to be honest, because like dialer is kind of the essentials. You need that. You need a CRM system. You need leads, of course. But when you get around like 10 people and plus, I would say gamification becomes essential, because you need to have some of these like competitive things that they can take the initiative themselves. But remember what drives salespersons, what motivates them is, keep in mind, it's not good enough for salesperson to know that between or among each other in the team, I'm the best, you are the best, you're the best at this. Like, remember, like what really motivates salespeople is like the results and what they can achieve. Like salespeople in general love to go to the family dinners and talk about like, hey, I closed that deal, I got this promotion, I have bought this house with a swimming pool, I have just ordered this new car. Like they love to have something to brag about. And if you put something as simple as being the best at putting notes in your CRM system into a gamification KPI within a tool like Sales Suite, for instance, then all of a sudden they'll start doing it the entire time, because they know when then Jimmy, the head of sales, go into Sales Screen and look, damn, you're very good at putting in notes. You have the highest achievement here. Or if the director for some reason jumps into the sales screen platform or walks by the screen and see, okay, you're very good at putting in notes, and you have no overdue task. You haven't had an overdue task for like 5 weeks. Like the best way to ensure that they are structured and all of those things is putting something measurable on there. Then you
Yeah.
know for sure that they will compete with it. Plus, then I like sales screens, not to make it biased about your platform, but I really love like the battle part, because what we have
Yeah.
seen is also like, of course, managers, the company itself can initiate a lot of competitions and so on. But keep in mind, like that, if you're running a new competition
Totally.
every other week, then it just becomes the new normal, and all of a sudden people don't really want to join it. Then I really like the battle functions that you have, because then our BDRs, they can do these competitions themselves basically. So it actually
Hmm.
means that you don't even have to take the initiative anymore, because they can sit and challenge each other, which basically just means that if they for some reason want to challenge on amount of bookings, on amount of calls, or maybe a combination of calls and bookings, then they can do that. And then they can risk something, so put something on the stakes, and then winner takes it all. But then the amazing part is that you can then go backwards and track how many battles have they won, etc. And that's back to why salespeople like these numbers. Like they want to be the guy or the girl that won
Yeah.
most battles.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, listen, thank you for that. I love having a little sales screen shout out, because we too like to take our own medicine. We like to drink our own champagne. Um, but I totally agree. I think, kind of it feels very much like the theme of the conversation that we're having is that salespeople like to be challenged. That
Yes,
more than anything, more than even the competition element of it, it's the
yes,
challenge element. Having putting in front of a salesperson, like, here is something that you may not be able to achieve, does something to their brain where they're like, oh no, I'm going to achieve that.
for sure.
And I think, to your point, gamification, I agree with you very much. I think gamification is magical. Whether you're doing that with sales screen, whether you're doing that with our platform, whether you're doing that just in your office on your own on a
Mm.
whiteboard,
Yeah,
however you're doing it, it doesn't make a difference. I think a lot of people think that gamification is just a fun, you're just playing games, not a big
yeah,
deal. But
yeah,
it's sociological, right? Like
yeah,
it's
yeah,
psychology. There's real science
mm.
behind it and how it affects your brain and how it
Yeah,
motivates you.
for sure.
And I think, yeah, if you're running the same competition every week, yeah, you're going to get bored. People aren't going to want to join. They're not going to want to
No,
do like team-wide competitions like that.
no, no.
Um, which
And it
is why
takes
it's
too
so
much
nice.
time. It also takes so much time to
Yeah.
set up these competitions and follow along with those competition. And you need to think about like your structure. It has to be new and excited. And then you need to
Hmm.
have a scorecard, etc. It takes so much time. And to be honest,
Yeah.
if you just slip once and you're not following up on these competitions here, then the entire purpose of the competition is dropped, because now the agents are not taking it serious. And the sales rep will
Yeah.
just be, yeah, maybe if we win this, we'll get the prize in 2 weeks, time, or 3 weeks, or maybe never. You never know. And maybe this week we'll hear about the competition, maybe not.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they will lack the interest. And That's how it is. That's how it is.
Yeah, it's true. There's accountability on both sides, right? Like there's
Mm-hmm.
the accountability on the salesperson to do what they need to do, to put their notes in.
Yeah, yeah,
But there's also accountability on the manager's side to make sure that you're maintaining the structure that you want your salespeople to be working
exactly.
within. And that can be a really difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
Um,
Agree. And it's not for everyone either. Like you can also, a little bit like we said, you can be a very good BDR, but not necessarily a good account executive. You can also be a very
Totally.
good sales leader, but not a very good person at taking organized competitions as well, right? So I think tools
Yeah.
like sales screens can help with that. And like what we have seen is like when we're running like these like classic gamification competitions like climb the mountain, etc. Like yeah, it's fun, but it's only fun if you're doing it like when it has relevance to it. Like it's funny enough
Totally.
if there's like a Tour de France or something like that, or you have the World Cup, then you do something special for that. But what we have seen as the most hitting thing for our sales reps is the achievements that sales green have, but also the way they can battle against each other,
Yeah.
because that is something they can take the initiative to themselves, and they can get so much pride in winning these battles here. But then it's not unnoticed. Like it will be documented somewhere, which is actually maybe almost the most essential part for a salesperson, because if it's not documented anywhere, then it didn't happen. So
Yeah.
it basically means it has to be documented. And then you can do
Yeah.
whatever you want. It could be make most coffees of the day or the longest streak without drinking a coffee. If there is a batch you can win, then go after that batch. There will be some crazy salespersons that would see how long they could streak without any coffee if there was a batch for it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. The recognition element is so huge, I think. That the need to overcome a challenge is a very intrinsic thing for so many
exactly.
salespeople. But I think that, once you've overcome that thing, or once you've
Mhm,
you've hit a milestone on your way to hitting that thing or whatever it
mhm.
is, there's still this desire. And I mean, it's a human nature, right? Like I think everybody wants this of being acknowledged for your effort, being acknowledged for the
Yeah,
work that you're
exactly.
putting in, even if you don't hit the goal, right? We think about like Olympic athletes, right? You go to the
Mhm.
Olympics and you don't get on the podium, you don't get third place, but you get
Yeah,
fourth or fifth or whatever. It doesn't matter. You still went to the freaking Olympics. Like you're
yeah,
still
exactly.
one of the most
Exactly.
elite athletes in the world, and that's worthy and deserving of
Yeah,
recognition that you put
for
in all of
sure.
that effort.
For sure.
So I
And
think
I
that
also
that's
think,
also
yeah,
so
for
huge.
sure. I totally agree. And I also think like also the way people sometimes are setting up goals for sales reps in general is sometimes
Mm.
maybe not the ideal way either. Like because sometimes you're only focusing on X amount of calls maybe, and then X amount of meetings booked or X amount of deals closed or something like that. And yes, it is a goal, but if you give a sales rep like 50 book meetings in 7 days, right? Yeah, that will be the goal, but it's maybe not super realistic, but that will be the goal. So even though that this person will hit 25, it'll never taste good for that person because the budget is 50. So what we also have looked into and really spent some time on is like also like how can we set up these goals? And if we set up a goal, how can we show them the instruction to reach that goal? Because yes, X amount of call could be a parameter, but stuff like prospect outbound time, like how much time are they spending on the phone? How much time are they spending in prep or wrap up time after and prior to a call? How many dials are they making? How many conversation hours do they have per month and so on? I mean, let's face it, you can never be a good SDR, a good salesperson by having made like 100 calls alone. You'll never be a success just by putting in a lot of hours in the prospecting part or doing a lot of dials, a lot of conversation time, and so on. Like you can only almost be a good salesperson if you hit your quota. But these KPIs here that we just discussed matters so much because this is essentially like the salesperson's GPS basically. So if you give them a budget on 20, you also better have some data that can tell exactly, okay, how much outbound time should they have? How many calls should they be doing a day, a month, a week, etc.
Yeah.
How many conversations should they have? And if they get these numbers that you can look throughout your data in your platform and see if you hit these numbers here, then the probability or the win rate will be way, way higher based on these metrics here. So first fundamental is getting these KPIs in order because then there's a higher probability that you will reach a quota. But
Hmm.
if you don't have all that data accessible for them, then it's a little bit like shooting in blind. Like, yeah, you get 20 book meeting per week or something like that. But what are you
Totally.
basing it on? Intuition or gut feeling? maybe because a former rock star did it, then all of a sudden his or hers KPIs will be replicated to the next generation of BDRs, and then it fails because maybe it's not realistic because you honestly didn't really know how that person maybe worked prior to them. So it's also about finding a scalable solution where you can kind of replicate the way the rock stars are working, put it out to the entire team so you can increase everyone's performance, plus have all the numbers available so you can see exactly like what will happen if you're adding one BDR more, two BDRs more, three BDRs more. But the only way you can know how those things are happening is by documenting everything. Every single data point has to be documented. So you need to find a tool that can help you doing that, because that actually means a lot. And it
Yeah.
also is a little bit like how a sales leader measuring their success. Of course, it could be in bonus, it could be in reaching the quotas, but it's definitely also growing the team. So
Mm.
of course they'll take pride, like it's way more fun, and they will be way more proud to going home to like the family dinner and say, yeah, I have a team of 50 SDRs rather than a team of 10. But it also has to be sustainable to go to that growth. And the only way you can know what the company will gain from having 10, 11, 20 is by knowing all your data down to each, every single corner, basically. Like you need to have all that data available, and then it can become also quite clear if a BDR is, or sales rep in general is performing in the way he or her is supposed to do, or if they're on the right path, or what can we adjust in order to bring them over to the finish line. So numbers in general is like super, super, super important. But again, achievements, something that can make them proud, is amazing, because as you said, there will also be months where they maybe not reaching their goal, but then if they maybe have some records, they can actually see, yeah, sure enough, you failed this month here, but you still have like X amount of closed one this year. You have X amount of active customer portfolio at your name right here and now. You have the longest streak with 100 calls per day. You have whatever
Yeah.
number there is, like then they can still keep that momentum into the next month. I think a lot of sales organizations are thinking too short term. So, like they're taking 1 month at a time. So basically, if you have an amazing month, let's say like June here will finish very, very strong, then you have an amazing month. Then when it becomes July, you rip up the page in the book, throw June out, and now you forgot all about June, and now we only talk about July. And because salespersons are so result oriented, they look at the goals and they didn't reach the goal, and all of a sudden it can basically kill their motivation completely, and sometimes even their like happiness about the position as well, just in 1 month
Yeah.
time. So it's also displaying that data over an X period of time, because then they can be proud of the numbers. They know everyone knows that they have actually done an amazing job, and they can actually maybe see that they're still putting in there.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that like the visibility into progress and into activity is so important, because I think that to your point, a lot of sales organizations would look at a bad month and think, okay, well, that person's just not being productive enough. And
Yeah,
that may not always be the case. As you said, it may be a vacation month. There's so many data points that come in that kind of
yeah,
influence whether or not a salesperson is going to be successful or not. And that's not always dependent on whether or not that person is doing, all of the calls that they need to be making, booking all of the meetings, doing all of the research, entering all the notes, whatever. It's like it's based on region, based on industry, based on time of year. Like there's so many
mm,
different elements that can come in and influence whether or not somebody's going to be successful. And having a
exactly.
tool, or even just having visibility into what that person has done, the effort that they're putting in, the progress that they're making, whether or not they're hitting their productivity KPIs, is so valuable in being able to say, you know, it didn't happen this time, but doesn't mean that it's not going to happen again. This isn't indicative of whether or not you're a good salesperson or whether or not you're a good BDR. It's just indicative of other influences. And maybe we need to look at your
Yeah,
outbound sequences, or we need to look at your scripts, or we need to look at
yeah,
your objection handling and
exactly.
just kind of like get an idea of what's going on here, because maybe there is a place that we can tighten up a little bit, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
Exactly. And there's also like,
so
then you also have the possibilities when you have numbers in front of you, then you can also see if it's like a management issue. And when I say
sure.
management issue, it's like a coaching issue. Because if it
Yeah.
is a person that putting all the work in the world into the system, right? Like then of course it could be a coaching related issue. But of course, if you can see in the numbers that this person here is not putting in there, so he's not or her is not putting enough, like prospecting hours in, calling hours in, and so on, like then of course it could also be that you need to have a talk with the sales rep. But it is important because it's your GPS. It's hard to
Yeah.
navigate if you don't have any like directions. So you need these numbers here. So I would also say like best advice when you want to scale outbound is just like quoted by Nike, is just do it. Really ensure in the beginning, like you eliminate all unnecessary clicks, because if there's too many unnecessary clicks to perform one call, like you click 3 or 5 times, voicemail, then another 3 or 5 times, voicemail, then the third time, 3 or 4 times, I'm already getting drained and exhausted, voicemail,
Yeah.
right? Like then all of a sudden, you also put them in a position where they have too many, and now it's excuses to not do the call, because not because they don't want to do the call, but because you distract them and you put them so many other places within the environment. So it's finding a system that can take care of your calls. So it's just like going into a train, into a flight, like take it from A to B to C, etc. Present the companies one by one, or the private persons one by one. So a salesperson only have to think about being in the zone, stay on the line, do the
Yep.
calls, and then the bookings and the sales will naturally float. After you have put that into place, then you need to display some data. And in the beginning, if you want to start, it's about like just displaying like whatever data that you can do about their work. So it could be amount
Yeah.
of calls, it could be talk time, it could be bookings. So in the beginning, when you think it's a very big task, what should I display? Just display what they're doing, because then you can also start to replicate that. You can start up set some standards. So you can start to see, do they need to be 1 hour on the phone every day, or are they supposed to be 2 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours? Like if you don't document what actually works, then it will just be a gut feeling again. So in the beginning, display what they're doing. Then, of course, like longer down in the funnel, like when you advance even more, then it could be that you should start to look into, okay, what are we displaying? Do we need to display even more? Do we need to get some more advanced data points so we can actually take like this machine to the next level? So that's like fine tuning the machine. Um, Once you know all of those things and you have like a good dialer, you have a good CRM set up, you have like the right reports, the dashboards, then of course start implementing like stuff like gamifications as well, because that will really, 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 really take a lot of effort away from the sales leaders, because then all
Mhm.
of a sudden they can actually start to play while they're working. But and usually when you implement gamification, you're usually getting higher performance, better performance, but people are actually also progressing. And the most amazing things is if you have a gamification tool that have like a streaks functions where you can build up streaks, like what sales leaders are doing so often, or team leaders for outbound teams is like, okay, today we need to hit these quotes, or why, Jimmy, did you go below this amount of calls today, and so on, and all of these things. Like you always try to talk about like these like very important KPIs, but what we have seen is having stuff like streaks, like put in a streak how many times in a row they can get like 100 calls a day, 200 calls a day,
Mhm.
because then I can guarantee you they'll not slip up once. It's just like the Snapchat function, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
for some reason you're starting sending blank snaps to each other just to keep the streak alive, right? It's so funny. So why not do it with stuff like calls or bookings or something like that actually matters? And
Yeah.
that's priceless to have those functionalities that can really help you. And then on top of all this, have a good career path that can showcase like how they can maybe go to an account executive if they want to be an account executive. But also if you are that type of BDR, SDR, they're actually quite happy about being in that position, then you also need to think about like, okay, how can you actually keep them in that position, but where they still feel that they can develop into something else? And then, of course, have regular coaching. Like we have a lot of coaching as well, because being in BDR in Adversus or in any other SaaS companies is actually a pretty challenging job. And you need to know so much about the industry, competitors, the platform, the landscape.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
there has to be some training as well, and it has to be recurring. And then celebrate the wins. Remember, success generates success. So you can do two things, right? Like if it's a bad month, then you can sit and cry about it, or we can say, okay, you know what? Now we're ready to kill the next month. And yeah, like being negative, being angry, being frustrated about results will never help them achieve the next goal. So be
Yeah.
positive, and then leading by example. So like bump up the motivation and then lead by example. And if it's a rough spell, if you are a leader, you are a leader for BDRs, go and deploy yourself and hunt.
Mhm.
Because I remember it was maybe a month ago in our BDR team that mandatory dialing days. And what that
Mm,
actually means is like the entire team, like the BDRs, the 20 BDRs we have is on the phone the entire time. Of course,
yeah.
they're also like prospecting a little bit, but 85% of their day is going just hammering the phones basically. But then we have like 2 dialing days per month where the account executive is also going down on the phones, call with them, and then we have some internal competitions. Sometimes it's the account executive against the BDRs. Sometimes we split the teams and so on. But then there was also like one time I have been challenged so many times to go on the phone, and I have always said, "Yeah, I'm busy. I have something else I need to do." Always
Yeah.
pushed it away, right? And then there was one day, one of my great PDRs, Mikkel, he challenged me and said, "Hey, are you going on the phone today, Jimmy? Is it today that you're going on the phone?" And then I was a little bit, no, I have something else I need to do. I told him that. And then while I was walking away from his desk, I was a little bit like, Jimmy, you know that will not be the next time either. I actually don't have any sales meetings in the book. All the account executive is dialing anyways. I'm just going to do it. At that time, I didn't really had doing much cold call for like almost 3 years, but I was anxious as hell. I was not anxious about if I was not booking meetings because I knew that the BDRs in the team would not be, of course, if I book a meeting, that would be great, but that is honestly not what they were looking at.
Yeah,
What they
that's
were
not the
looking
point.
at, how quickly would Jimmy find an excuse for drop off the phone? How fast will it go before he picked up his phone and say, I have something urgent that I need to
Oh,
do?
I gotta
So
go. Yeah.
exactly. So I knew already, and that's the beauty of being a salesperson myself. I knew how they would think. Like they didn't really
Yeah.
care if I booked any meetings. They was just looking at the was how long will this man survive on the phone? And I told myself, you know what? If I'm saying that they need to have like 5 hours of campaign outbound time every single day myself, then I'll show them how easy it was. And I got like one of the most campaign hours booked free meetings, and it was a success. So I was
Yeah.
super happy, but I was also a bit lucky. I was also a bit lucky, right? So I also think if you're a sales leader, like lead by example, because that's the best way to kill excuses. It's the best way to lead them because if they're saying, yeah, no one is picking up the phone, the leads aren't qualified, it's terrible leads, etc. Like if you show that you're ready to work under the same conditions as them, what are they gonna say? Then they can come and punch you on the shoulder and say, shouldn't we see, Jimmy, if we could do something with the leads instead of saying, yeah, the leads are whack. I can't call these. Like
Yeah.
so I think it's so important. Lead by example. Like find these tiny spots where you can actually showcase it.
Yeah. I love that story because again, it just highlights the intrinsic need to overcome a challenge, which is
Yeah.
just so inherent in so many salespeople. But um, I've loved chatting with you today. I feel like this
Likewise.
was a really great conversation, and yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here and for
Likewise.
uh,
Likewise. It was really a pleasure.
chatting
And
with
yeah,
us.
I'm looking forward to chat with you next time.